Scotland are getting battered, England are stinking out the Euros, but we have a Premier League season to reflect on and look ahead to what might be to come in the next couple of months or so. Alongside me to do that, I've got the Lutonian journalist James Cunliffe. Not much of a summer, Jimbo, but at least we got some football.
We'll push through. We'll remember the good times and some of the bad ones as well.
And we'll do all of that right after this intro.
Can you believe it? We are Premier League! Yes!
I love this town. I love this town. I love this town. You know what I love about this town is actually you. Everyone in it has got these massive souls. We're Luton people, and that's what we care about.
Hello everyone, welcome along to the last episode of the 2023-24 season of the Luton Town Supporters Trust podcast. As I said before the intro, I am joined by the Lutonian journalist James Cunliffe. And Jimbo, it's been about 4 weeks since that Fulham home game and the Premier League run came to an end. What are your reflections, having had a bit of time to look back on it now?
Yeah, it's good, isn't it? With the hindsight, what it does for you. But I think really, by the time we recorded the review of that podcast a day or two later, I think I'd gotten over it anyway. We sort of knew what could happen all the way through, and we were realistic about it. And yeah, I think that's what's good about this club and this fan base at the moment. That it was nothing but pure support. And then nobody really threw their toys out the pram, really. And I think a lot of people are quite looking forward to the Championship in the sense that, A, you're going to win a lot more games, or you would hope so, or something's gone seriously wrong if not. And you don't have VAR and stuff like that, which, was the bane of everybody's life up there. But, it is swings and roundabouts because there'll be some things that take away from the experience. You did get to watch top-class football. You didn't have to travel to some of the
Don't do that yet.
The northern ones that we're going to have to
Don't do that yet.
Yeah, some top class players which we, I think everybody realises is not going to be there.
No, indeed, we'll come on to that shortly. Obviously, one in particular looks like has left. Plenty of sort of reputable journalists have reported with regards to Ross Barkley. But since we last recorded, James, we've had the release list out. Wasn't really anyone on that list that was a massive shock. I think we all kind of knew that Luke Berry's time in Luton was coming to an end. As it turned out, not necessarily our decision. We were going to activate the 1-year extension in his contract, but he wants game time, which is completely and utterly understandable. And in news broke today, well, it broke a few weeks ago, didn't it? But it was made official today that he's joined up with Nathan Jones at Charlton. That's going to be a good combination. They're going to be a good team to keep an eye on in League One next season. And in a way, I'm kind of glad he's gone there because I didn't really want to run into him in the Championship because first and foremost, he's a real goal threat, as we've seen this season just past. But also, on the flip side of it, we've not really had a chance to say goodbye. So if he was still in the Championship, we would at least have had that. But ultimately, him scoring against us would be bigger evil than not getting a chance to officially say goodbye, so to speak.
Yeah, I mean, we sort of knew that he'd be going. I think a player like him is in the twilight of his career, but can still do it and still cut it. Wasn't going to get the game time, and we're yet to see what the midfield will look like in the Championship. But he's in his 30s now. He's 31, so there's, even though that contract clause was there, possibly to be taken up, it would have only been that, and maybe he would have still been a second string as he was in the Premier League, and that's not what he wants to do. He can still do it, as we've seen when he came on and scored a couple of goals and made some history. So you can't begrudge him that, and I think nobody was surprised to see him rock up at Charlton at all, and I don't think it'll be the last one of the old guard of Nathan Jones at old Luton teams. So it'd be one to keep an eye on this summer. I don't begrudge him going there. He'll be great in League one. He really will. He could have cut it in the Championship, absolutely, if he went to a Championship side. And, you know, they will have ambitions to get promoted, won't they? So that's another feather in his cap if he does that at another club. But what a player he's been. I mean, I couldn't have been happier when he scored in the Premier League to make that history, particularly if it's against Forest as well, and the manner in which it's done, because at the time it gave us so much hope. As it turned out, short-lived, but you know, in the moment it was wonderful, wasn't it? And you know, I think everybody wishes him well. He's been such an incredible player for this football club. It's sad in a way, isn't it, that it's really the old guard have all but gone now. The fact that they gave James Shea an extra contract keeps Shazy around, but yeah, they're few and far between now because Dan Potts has gone as well.
Yeah, we'll come on to him in a moment, but 3 promotions for Luke Berry as a Luton Town player. Some absolutely enormous goals for us, both in those promotion winning seasons, in that Championship survival season. You know, we've all got our favourite Luke Berry moments. You mentioned it there, the goal against Notts Forest. He'll have 2 Premier League goals to take away. Obviously, no one's really going to remember the one that he scored against Brentford because of the result on the day. But, you know, it still goes on his ledger. I mean, when we signed him in League Two, I don't think anyone no one foresaw the club in the Premier League, let alone Luke Berry in the Premier League with us. He went through that horrendous injury, which happened right in front of me at Colchester, and I can still picture it to this day. Nasty injury. Came out the other side though, and never, ever, ever went on the football pitch in a Luton shirt and let us down.
Absolutely not. I think the promise was there when he got signed. We all knew what we were getting. He was one of the better players in that division, and he'd been Cambridge's star man. It's his boyhood club. But you never know if it translates when they come over. But as it happened with the players that Nathan signed at that time, they largely all fitted in and slotted in, and that's why that squad was so good and is so well thought of to this day, really. And the fact that he managed to get up to the Premier League with Luton, I know all the talk was about Pelly, wasn't it, doing all 5 divisions, but he has, but not with Luton. But he scored in the top 4, and he scored in the conference with Cambridge as well. So an incredible player. For anybody to be able to do that and go up the leagues and still be able to do it in whatever capacity, I mean, he was instrumental in getting up to the Premier League, wasn't he? He scored a penalty, and certainly at Wembley, and his goals popping up were just so regular, and that's hard to replace. It's going to be whether he was a first teamer or in the thoughts of being a first teamer. He was an option off the bench, and whenever Luke Berry was introduced off the bench, you thought Luton could nick something here, or they could get another one, and that was always the case. And to find and unearth another one of those somewhere, they're going to have to. The recruitment team have got their work cut out, but yeah, I think everybody wishes him well, doesn't he? What a servant for the football club. He'll be a legend, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. If anyone can replace him, it's this recruitment team. That's for sure. But yeah, it goes without saying, Luke Berry's welcome back at Kenilworth Road, in a Luton away end, home end, wherever. Absolutely anytime he likes. A brilliant guy. And that's going to be a theme of everyone that we talk about on this podcast. Let's move to, I mean, you mentioned that Luke Berry scored a vital penalty, the 5th penalty at Wembley. Let's talk to the man, who scored the one that got us into the Premier League, Dan Potts. I mean, it's wrong to say that in all of the time that he was at Luton, the most important things he did was winning 2 coin tosses, but it was bloody important. And you kind of saw that in some of those European finals that happened recently, just what it means to be taking penalties in front of your own fans, and indeed in the playoffs themselves. But I mean, Dan Potts came here as a left back, didn't he, under John Still, and he had that season in League One, didn't he, where we just had to unleash JJ. So, you know, he found his way inside to centre back. But another one, 3 promotions on his CV. The only really sad thing with the Dan Potts journey as a Luton player was he never got a Premier League appearance for us. Got a Premier League appearance for West Ham, but he hasn't got a Premier League appearance for Luton, having put in so much graft and so much work and been such a vital part of the squad, whether it's on the pitch or in the dressing room. You only had to see that video that the club have put out to see how good a guy he is. Obviously, with everything that he went through as a youngster as well, to be the man that he is, fantastic. But this club will always be indebted to him for that strike from a penalty spot at Wembley in May 2023.
Hell of a strike as well, wouldn't it? I mean, I must admit, when he was walking up, although I would say this about every single player that walked up, I was bricking it, thinking, no.
I was fine until Marvellous walked up. When Marvellous went up, I was like, oh my good God, now I can't do this anymore.
But as it turns out, some of the best penalties in a shootout I've ever seen, club or country. Absolutely wonderful stuff. And he stuck his away with aplomb. He celebrated like a man possessed, really, and at the final whistle. There's so many great scenes of him with the captain's armband on at the time. Don't forget, and that's why he went up for the coin toss and got those, and just his reaction for that and the way he signalled to the home fans that it's going over to you was an incredible boost, considering how nervous we all were at the time. But no, incredible servant as well. He was great in the League Two times, and then his part in Luton Town's history is in part highlighted by his injuries, and then the League One injury obviously gave JJ his chance, and he never looked back. And now look at him. If he hadn't picked up injuries in the last 2 seasons with Leicester, maybe he would have been in shout with an England spot. Maybe not this season because they got relegated, but when they were in the Premier League for sure, he got his shot, didn't he? And that was because Dan Potts got injured. He was the first choice left back at the time, and after that, after we saw what JJ could do and added new verve to that position, when Dan Potts came in, he was a solid defender, but never really sort of had that, aura of JJ in an attacking sense. But when he moved into the left centre back, I think he made it his own, and he shone in that position. And in the Championship promotion season where he played so many games, it's so disappointing when you look back at that time, because he did appear so much and he seemed like he'd got over all the injury problems he had, and then to get up to the Premier League and just keep breaking down and at a time when bloody hell needed defenders, didn't we? It was just it's a gutting for him, and I mean, never really got to see what could happen there. But I think for the honours he's earned at this football club is going to be another one in the players that played in that League Two season, and indeed when you add in Pelly that played in the conference season as well, to all manage to get to the Premier League. You can't say that anything other than legends, can you?
No, you can't. You really can't. As I say, he'll always go down as the man who kicked the winning penalty to get Luton to the Premier League, and of course the 5 before it were absolutely brilliant. I won loads of money backing him to score first in that League One. In that Championship promotion winning season. I think he did it in the first day of the season, first away game of the season at Burnley, didn't he?
Wasn't it? Yeah.
And just didn't stop. And I'll have to find another one to do that with. But yeah, I mean, absolute brilliant servant, Potsy. You could see why he was captain when he was on the pitch, and a leader off of it. Another one that left, this one was obvious, Fred Onyedinma. He basically left at the start of the season when he went on loan at Rotherham anyway. I always think of Fred, he always makes me think good about football, not just because he's a great guy, not just because he's a great footballer, but whenever I think of Fred, I think of his debut. And his debut was when we finally got allowed back into football grounds after 18 months. We could have lost 10-0 and that would have been a great day because we were back in a football ground. But we were brilliant that day against Peterborough, and he was absolutely superb. He absolutely lit that up. I think he scored the third goal, it was second or third goal. And he set another one up for Harry Cornick in the same game. Obviously, we've seen Fred Onyedinma a lot because Wickham followed us through the leagues at the time. So we knew who we were getting. We knew what we were getting. But just to be there on that hot August day and have him sort of do his thing just made everyone sort of think, yeah, we're back. Football's back. It's back to normal. The world is back to normality. And whenever I think of Fred, I think of that day.
Yeah, electric performance as well. His pace was fantastic, and the way he came to the club as well has to be said, because Luton are in a different world now, aren't they? From the money that's going to be available from the Premier League, basically the fans bought him, didn't they? From the contributions back then, and that's the stark reality of the rise of Luton, but where so many clubs were in that time, that post-pandemic time, where everybody was really, they had no money. There was no money going about because you couldn't get fans in the ground. So that aspect of it, the way he came to the club, the transfer committee or whatever it was, and then to put in such a great performance when everybody was allowed back in the stadium, it was. And he's been such a useful player, but when we've seen it so many times over a decade, that when the club has gone too quickly for some players, and it was for him, and that's why he was loaned out to Rotherham. But to come back in, he would have known that, but he's a professional as well, so he would have thought that maybe I can impress and win my place back. Stranger things have happened, but he came in and he did a job when needed, and he didn't moan about it at all. He always had a smile on his face as well. So yeah, you wish him well, and hope he gets a championship or top League One level club for sure, because just on a human level, he's just a top bloke.
Yeah, unbelievable guy. I mean, obviously the events at Sunderland in that promotion winning season, just showing that footballers can be normal. I mean, we know that at Luton anyway, don't we? There's copious sort of examples of it. Yeah, great player. Probably unlucky, really, because I'm convinced that the start of that season, Nathan was going to transition into a 4-3-3, but he lost literally every centre-back. Hey, that sounds a bit familiar. Literally every centre-back in pre-season that season, didn't he? And we had to start that season with, I think it was Gabe Osho and Cal Naismith at the heart of the defence for that Peterborough game. And then when the defenders started coming back, he couldn't leave Cal Naismith out, so he transitioned back into a 3. Obviously, Fred's a winger. Just wasn't any real place for him in the side long term. And of course, we've stuck with that under Rob Edwards. The ironic thing is, I still believe next season that we're going to play a 4-3-3 formation, but we've just moved on from Fred's level, really. That's just how it is. But yeah, Potsy, Fred, Luke Berry, we wish them all well. 2 others that left the club didn't have the impact of those 3, but were still around for promotion campaigns. Elliot Thorpe and Admiral Musquet. We saw more of Thorpe in the first team than we did Musquet, and he looked a useful player. But at the same time, you saw him in 3 or 4 different positions, and that always sort of sends warning signals to me at players. It's certainly in today's football, they need a standout position, otherwise they're just going to get swamped by people who are standouts in that. I mean, you just look at the England game of the weekend with Phil Foden, put him out of position, doesn't look anywhere near as good. But he'll be useful somewhere along the line, Elliot Thorpe, and I'm sure Admiral Musquet will get a contract. But again, didn't get the minutes on the pitch they would have liked, but certainly contributed off of it.
Yeah, I mean, for Thorpe, he's been equally decimated by injury, really bad ones, really season-ending ones, twice, I think, isn't it? And that's never going to bode well when you're really sort of trying to make your way in the game at such a young age. And he always looked quite useful in the pre-season games that I saw, because he knew he had something to prove, but never really sort of broke through, and that's why he went on loan. And you just hope that he can recover physically so he can have a career, because that would be terrible. I don't think he's even 25 yet, is he? Maybe just pushing it. To have had such this stop-start to your football career is not going to help. And and Musquet obviously signed as a prospect, wasn't he? And I think again in a more stark way to what we were just saying there about Fred, that just the level went up too quick for him, and also the emergence of Adebayo and Morris as the strike partnership when he come along, and they tried him in sort of different support roles that didn't quite work and stuff like that. And it's just one of those things, isn't it? That's football. There are going to be those players that don't quite make it, but yeah, you wish them well, because they didn't do anything to disgrace themselves in a Luton shirt, and yeah, that's just football.
Indeed, it is. Yep. And one last out, Dion Pereira's gone on loan to Dagenham for the season. It's simple situation here. Club have gone far too quickly for the progression of Pereira. He'll be a good footballer for someone, but he'll be at a lower level than what we're currently operating at. He's gone out on loan for Dagenham, and when his contract's up, presumably we'll release him and he'll get a full-time gig somewhere else. So we wish him well in his season with Dagenham, and hope that he can also have a season where he's not plagued by injuries and can make an impact in the game. You mentioned earlier, another year's been given to James Shea, which I think we're all delighted about, because he gets it. Your colleague Mike did an interview with him in the Luton News a couple of weeks ago, and he just gets it, doesn't he? But there was a quote that, I don't know, I presume Mike's copied it word for word, about he speaks to players who leave Luton and it's never the same. And that pretty much is this football club in a nutshell.
I think it is, because there's such a strength and a unity in not only the team, where they've had, ever since Nathan came in, they've had this ethos of signing players as good humans first, and they'll fit in various different ways on the football pitch and off the football pitch, and that seems to have gelled so well for a number of seasons that it can't be a fluke, because Nathan's not here anymore. They
have a saying, don't they, which isn't right for a family show, but I'm sure you can get the gist of it. No sort of so-and-so's,
Yeah, and it does show, because they've been so successful. With, obviously, football revolves, the cast around it revolves every season. There'll be the core players that stay, but it keeps changing, as you see. But whenever those new players come in and old ones go out, it still continues to work. And you see it last season, when the likes of Ross Barkley and Sambi Lokonga just couldn't believe the support that Luton was getting, even in 10-game winless runs, and there was still that support, and that's just unique. It's just not going to happen anywhere else. I'd be very surprised if it happens anywhere else very often in this country, for sure. I think that in foreign countries it might be slightly different. I think that there's quite a lot of fanatical support over there for many. But to see that, and I don't think that we ever thought that Sambi Lokonga would be kept on at all. But I think he said himself that he'd love to be back at some point, at some day, because it was that special bond. And even with players like James Shea, who knows it, but he's had the opposite football life to someone like Ross Barkley and Sambi Lokonga. He's been at the top, or started at the top as a youth, and didn't quite make it, and had to go all the way down to semi-professional football, and then to somehow get this chance and have had the impact that he had at Luton. Don't forget, he was a Golden Glove winner in the League One season. He's had to play second string, third string even, but he understands his role at the football club. And as a support role, that's hard to grasp for most people. Most people would say, well, wouldn't you want to play football? But goalkeeper's also very different, isn't it? There's only so many goalkeepers you can fit in a side, one. And mostly they always are the same one. They rarely revolve, unless you're Arsenal, which seems to. But so there's always one that sits on the bench, and there's always a third, and sometimes it's a fourth. And Scott Carson has won every trophy going. He's never barely played a match for Manchester City, but he's always in the photos going, yay. But I think that Luton is just right for James Shea. I think he lives in London, North London still, and he gets the train in to train in. He says himself that coming in every day is a dream stuff, and that's what fans want to hear, because it would be for every single fan to do that as a job. And also the fact that you probably only have to work for 4 hours a day, then you go and have a rest. Great stuff. So it's good. I think that it does keep this continuation for a little while longer of the squad that we had from League Two. Keeps that story going a little bit, that little link back to the past.
Yeah, it does. Yeah. You're right. He does get the training. I've left the training ground at the same time as him a couple of times. I've gone one direction, he's gone the other. But we've had a natter whilst we're walking over to the train station. I mean, he's a great guy. I've got to know him. He loves this club. He's appreciative of what this club's given him. The fact that we've got him through 2 fairly lengthy injuries as well, and everything else. And you're right about the goalkeeper position. Yes, he might not start. Well, he's not going to start with Thomas Kaminski around. That much is obvious. But a training goalkeeper is becoming more and more a thing these days. England took Tom Heaton to the Euros, haven't they, as a training goalkeeper? They don't want their first choice goalkeepers these days. They're kind of precious commodities. They don't want them facing shots in training that could potentially injure them. So they put the training goalkeeper in there as well, and the goalkeeper works on their drills separately. So it's not like he's just literally going to be taking a wage or anything like that. He is actually going to be working hard. He'll be literally, as it says on the tin, the training goalkeeper and the backup to the first team. There are lots of rumours starting to do the rounds that Tim Krul's going to leave the club. I can certainly see that, in which case that would elevate James Shea to the bench. And it makes sense for a year, doesn't it? Who knows where we're going to be at the end of that year. So let's just see where we are. But you've got a guy who loves coming to work. He's happy with the role that he's been given. Why would you upset the apple cart and go and look for someone who might not be as happy in that position, which is a fixed position, whilst Kaminski's fit?
Yeah, it also says something about the football club as well, that not this time round with the contract extension, but the last time around when he was injured. He just got injured and his contract was up, and Gary Sweet honoured it, didn't they, and extended it then because of the service he's done. It's like that's almost unheard of in football. I think it's a very ruthless sport, and they always say there's not any room for sentimentality, although there is. We know there is. We thrive off it, but in the transfer market, it's certainly not. And so there's no question that I think he loved the club before that happened. I'm not saying that he loves the club because he loved the club because he came in. It was such a great bunch of lads, and they were successful. That always helps. But then to have that rewarded by getting such a really horrible injury, really bad injury, and then potentially your future's up in the air. Don't know how you're going to earn a crust, but the club honour that and keep paying you the wage. It's remarkable. They didn't even have Premier League money at that point. It was just because the club treats its players right.
Yeah, indeed. I mean, Shazy knew. Well, we all knew that he wasn't going to be fit for the first 6 months of the promotion-winning campaign. Hence why they brought Ethan Horvath in, and he wasn't. He wasn't on the bench until sort of much later in that season, and then of course, slowly made his way in. Brilliant that he got that 15 minutes in the Premier League. If we do get back there and Shazy's not at the club, he's got that 15 minutes to hold on to, really. And I'm glad that the club did that. Looks like Barkley's left. When generally these days, when reputable journalists, not that you're not, but like Fabrizio Romano were making these things, then his contact level is slightly faster than yours are, mate. So I think at some point we're going to hear that. People are kind of suggesting to me that we're not going to hear it until the 1st of July when the PSR rules tick over to another season. But it looks like he's gone to Aston Villa for a fee which will undoubtedly be undisclosed, so I won't disclose it, but it's acceptable for the football club. And
well, I mean, the reports are 5 million, and that's just the base fee, isn't it? So you can well expect that it will rise with appearances, and certainly the sticker clause in there. If he goes and plays some Champions League games, then there'll be more money in the pot there. So you can well see that rising, maybe not doubling, 8 million maybe.
Which isn't bad for a guy that you got on a free transfer. who's entertained us for a whole season. We wish him well. And, we thank him for giving us football that we're not going to forget in a hurry. We're just not. And just hope that his career continues on the upward curve that we've got it onto over the course of the last season. I mean, we've done the debate on this podcast. We've had Wilco. He said it. We've all done the debate. He's the best player I've ever seen in a Luton shirt. And I suspect he'll be the best player I see in a Luton shirt for a little while to come, albeit I hope in a couple of years' time he's usurped, but it will take some usurping.
It will. But, it's... No, everybody knew the situation. Everybody knew that this day would come. I'm still gutted about it, to be honest. And the speed in which the link with Aston Villa was made, and it be incredible rather than just some ITK bedroom dweller saying it was a proper link that in the days to come will be confirmed. And you can't begrudge him to be back in the Champions League spot. And maybe having a decent crack at it, because I think they're going to have to. I know you mentioned about PSR, but they're probably going to have to sell the likes of Douglas Luiz just to fit in with those rules. And so,
I suspect
that is a great buy for them.
I suspect he's found that he's asked that. I don't think he'd have gone to go and do what he did at Chelsea and play a game mystery. I think he's going because there's a genuine door open into a first team. I'm not saying he'd stay here in the Championship, but I don't think he'd have left us to be a bit part player. I think he's been and done that. I think he now, for whatever he's got, 5, 6, 7 years, however long it is, he wants to play every game that he's fit for now. So, you're right. It's perfect. And obviously knows Villa. He's there on loan as well, wasn't he? So, we wish Ross all the best. There is no destination for Sambi Lokonga yet. We know that he's transfer listed at Arsenal. We know that they're wanting to sell. We know that he's out of our price range, I suspect, but he's also out of our league in terms of dropping down to the Championship. He's far too good for that. I watched Belgium earlier. Can't understand how. I mean, they must think that he's French or something like that, because how we don't get into that midfield, I've no idea. But very much the same as Ross Barkley. Maybe not quite with the sort of high-level silky skills like that back heel against Chelsea and things like that. But what Sambi Lokonga does, he does exceptionally well. We never, ever got to see that midfield we dreamt of seeing, of Ross Barkley, Sambi Lokonga and Marvellous Nakamba. But we did see a lot of Ross Barkley and Sambi Lokonga, and we'll remember it.
Yeah, it was a great partnership, and really fine pair of players there that really performed at the top of their abilities and gave us so much hope. And I think if the likes of Lokonga and Adebayo hadn't got injured at the points they did, when things were just starting to gel, then I think we could be talking about preparations for another Premier League season. I think the debate's there to be had, really, but it is what it is, and they got injured, and it didn't quite happen for the Town in that way. But an absolutely fantastic player, again, a top bloke, top human being that they got in there that I think will, he'll keep an eye on what they're going to do, and maybe if he can get back up to there, and nobody has snapped him up so far, or by then, indeed, then maybe, never know what could happen. But I think that he was linked with Bayern Munich early on after Company went, which is absolutely fucking bonkers that's happened, by the way. But
I thought you meant I thought you meant it was bonkers that Bayern Munich want Sambi Lokonga.
No, that Vincent Kompany's gone there. But I can see the arguments for it. But for a team that needs to somehow usurp Xavi Alonso's Leverkusen in the next season, to pick a bloke that's lost 28 games in a season and has shown absolutely no ability to understand what a plan B is quite beyond me. But I'm a Bayern Munich fan, so I don't have to worry about it.
Munich or Luton, it's not much of a choice, that, is it? I mean, the longer it goes without him getting snapped up, if Arsenal have to sell, again, for PSR reasons, if we get towards the end of the transfer window and he's still at Arsenal, it might be that we're runners.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if it's PSR, but they've given him notice that he's not going to be playing, so he's got to. But at the same time, if he's got a contract in a very different sense of Dion Pereira's gone out on loan, but still on his Luton contract, then there's no way that Sambi Lokonga is not going to stay on an Arsenal contract if they can't sell him properly. So maybe it's all very much ifs and buts, and we're in a different league, literally and metaphorically now. So who knows? But it would be magic to see him back in a Luton shirt, as it would be Ross Barkley at some point in the future. But who knows?
Yeah, absolutely. Never say never in football, that's for sure. The other one to have left us, Issa Kabore. We knew that was going to happen as well. I've seen it mentioned a few times on social media that we might get him back. I don't see that happening. I think Daiki Hashioka was always the long-term vision down that side. I wouldn't be at all surprised if we sign another right back, but I just don't see it being Issa Kabore. Again, dropped off a couple of times at the back stick, but that aside, improved pretty much throughout the course of the season. Played right back, played right centre back, played left centre back, played pretty much everywhere that we asked him to play. Was the provider to the goal of the season. Left us with plenty of good memories, and we wish him well wherever his career is. It's not going to be at Man City whilst Kyle Walker's there, but wherever that career path takes him, we wish him well in it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he's showcased himself in the Premier League now, as well as Ligue 1 the season before with Marseille. So there's a player in there for sure, and we saw flashes of it. We saw flashes of the other side, which was unfortunate as well. But he's young, and he'll learn. He's an international, fully fledged international at that. He'll be playing for Burkina Faso. I think if he's playing for Burkina Faso when he's playing for Luton, then he'll play for whatever team he goes to next. So I shouldn't wonder. So, I didn't expect him to stay, but that's the nature of loans, isn't it? You've got to understand that. Although there has been one or two loans down the years where you go, you shouldn't get attached to them too much, but you do because they turn out to be good players. But I don't think he quite reached that level in Luton fans' hearts, but. He did have some good moments, that's for sure. So I think, Hashioka is going to be the guy that has to come in and hit the ground running, really. I mean, I'm not going to put any blame on him for anything that he did in that season. He come in midway through to a team that's, battling against relegation in a Premier League, which is the toughest league in the world. So, a good pre-season. I'm confident that the Luton recruitment team would have done their due diligence on the man, and it will come out and fight for his place as we hope it will. But it's across the back line, further at centre, that is the concern at the moment, I think, isn't it?
It is, but we're not kicking a ball in competitive action for another 8 weeks, or just under 8 weeks. So plenty of time to get that sorted out. He did play for Japan in a World Cup qualifier last week, so if he can play for Japan, I'm sure as hell he can play in the Championship. Daiki Hashioka, that's for sure.
And a good Japan side as well, has to be said, after what they did in the World Cup and stuff like that. So, there's a player there. Maybe he was just a bit overawed a little bit by some of the Premier League, who knows? But
it's hard, isn't it? I mean, he joined on middle of January, he done a lap of honour on January 30th, It's so hard for January transfers. That's why they never go right, because it is so hard for them to get up to speed anyway. Least of all in a side that is running out of energy everywhere you look. Whole pre-season behind him, knowing his teammates from the start. I mean, you got to think he'd had gone on the pitch for the first 2 or 3 times. Probably didn't know who was Jack and who was Jill. It's like, and it showed. And of course, he didn't play in the positions that we expect him to. Yeah, I fully expect Daiki Hashioka to show exactly why he's a Japan international next season, if given the chance, and I'm sure he will get that chance. Just a couple of other sort of...
I didn't see much of Jack and Jill on the pitch, by the way, but I imagine they just pulled a hamstring, didn't they?
I tell you what, we could have done with Jack, Jill, and then everyone else at certain times. We had that many injuries last season, didn't we? You're right. They probably did pull a hamstring. Every other bugger did. I think the one thing we're going to sign this summer And there's no rumours coming about players coming in yet, and there'll never be rumours about players coming in because they keep it so locked behind closed doors. It's untrue. Any rumours that you do see out there are just made up. It's not to say that one or two don't actually come in the door eventually, but they're not there at the time. They're so good at hiding transfers. How you hide Ross Barkley come into a club, if they can do that, they'll certainly hide most of their summer transfers. But I would imagine every single player that comes through the door, and I don't think there'll be as many as people expect there to be because there doesn't need to unless other players leave, will have one strong thing behind them, and that is robustness. We are not going to sign players that are not robust and get ourselves into that situation ever again, particularly in light of the fact that we're about to embark on a 46-game championship schedule, which is going to be brutal. They will all be robust. They will all have gone through their paces, and you can guarantee they'll be there to last the course and distance and not sort of get injured and things like that. Just quickly touch on a couple of other rumours that are sort of doing the rounds. I just mentioned just then, Tim Krul to West Ham has been mentioned. That would make sense. They like a veteran goalkeeper, don't they? And he clearly sees his time in the Premier League because he could have just stayed at Norwich if he didn't. So you can kind of see some mileage in that. We've given James Shea another contract, so we've got two goalkeepers. Jack Walton's there as well, so we've got a third goalkeeper. That seems like one that would tick every box, and if it does, Tim Krul was a huge figure in the dressing room last season, and we would wish him all the best. Didn't necessarily show his greatest stuff in the cups, but it's hard to judge someone on. Well, that's true. It's hard to judge someone on a performance every 2 or 3 months or whatever. But yeah, we would wish him well, and thanks for helping out in that season in the Premier League.
Yeah, he's not going to be one of the players that you'd be worried about going. If he does, if he can go to West Ham and get himself a deal there, then fair play. I think I didn't keep much tabs on Walton as well, but he was highly rated when he come here. So there's that as well. I think the main thing is to keep Kaminsky. Obviously, I wouldn't be surprised if somebody put a bid in for him because the amount of shots he did save, and he kept scores down in many games. Fantastic goalkeeper. So, but I think Luton probably in a position where they can withstand many bids, unless they come in, really, really silly money.
Which for a 31-year-old isn't going to happen, is it?
No, it's not going to happen. But he's one of the ones I thought would come in and provide good Premier League experience. But if the worst happened, which ultimately did, that you get relegated, probably wouldn't be around. So I wouldn't be surprised with it.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't either. Just as I say, just how he left Norwich. In pretty much the identical situation, it would make sense for him to move on. I'm only going to briefly touch on these because I don't think there's much foundation to any of them. There's certainly no foundation that Jose Mourinho's having any sort of eye on Elijah Adebayo. I don't even think Jose Mourinho knows where Luton is, let alone Elijah Adebayo. Whoever dreamt that one up, fair play to you. You've got lots of likes, you've got lots of interaction and everything else, but let's leave that one there.
I think he probably flew out of Luton to go to Fenerbahce, but that's probably about it.
Yeah, that is absolutely it. Just the other two, that there's been little bits of snippets that Brentford want Alfie Doughty and Fulham want Ted Mengi. The Fulham one might have a little bit more legs because they lost Tosin to Chelsea, so it'd be a like-for-like replacement. He's under contract though, Mengi. That's perfectly clear. He's not going to be sold on the cheap. An England under-21 international will command a decent fee, even though we're in the Championship. Brentford, Alfie Doughty. Again, you can see it, but by the same token, you can also see that it's just agents and names and clickbait.
Yeah, I mean, at this stage of the summer, you wouldn't be surprised if bids have gone in, or maybe not even bids, just sounding out about the possibilities of these things, because it's clear that when teams get relegated, and if there's some high performers in those teams, then the Premier League look to kind of get some cut price bargains. And considering the PSR rules around many at the moment, then that's what it would be for them on their perspective. From Luton's perspective, if the two players did go, you'd sell them for certainly club record fees. So it would be nothing. It would be a pittance to those clubs, but it'd be big money for Luton in terms of selling their players. But I wouldn't like either of them to go. Mengi was a colossus when he came in and proved that he could be a main man, and he was. And obviously Doughty had a wonderful season up to maybe about January time, wasn't it? And then he just got knackered, didn't he? But his stats were incredible. He was great in the Championship season. And if he can do that again in the Championship, I'd want him to be there. But I think that both of them have this similar thread to the likes of the other players that understand what a good club it is. But then it's the pull, and how big a pull is it to be back in the Premier League with these, and how much guarantee you could get to be playing full time. Like you mentioned earlier, Ross Barkley, I'm pretty sure that he's sounded that out. What's the chances of me playing many, many games? And he's gone there. I think the same would be for those two, because Doughty for sure, until he got to Luton, injury prone, had really loads of trouble and haven't played as many games as he would have wanted. Mengi just couldn't get a look in. I don't know how at Manchester United he couldn't get a look in, so he took the brave option and went to Luton. And I think he like everybody understands that what he experienced last season was pretty incredible from a fan player perspective.
Yep. The key thing is both men are under contract. So were bids to come in, they go on our terms, not the opposition club. That wasn't the case for Barkley, who I think it's been reported had a clause in his contract that he could leave to sign for a club that were in Europe. One person going out, where the rumours are getting louder and louder and louder, and the longer he doesn't sign a Luton contract, you can see them only getting louder and louder and louder, is Gabe Osho. It was said in the press release when we released the players that we released that we've offered Gabe Osho a new contract. That clearly hasn't yet been signed. Otherwise, these rumours that he's going to Sheffield United wouldn't be around. And the longer it happens, the longer you can see it happening, can't you? Clearly, the offer that we've given him is only competitive from our point of view, maybe not his, because if it was any more than that, he would have presumably just signed it. But then we've also, on the flip side of this, had this situation with Pelly a few seasons ago, when basically he was being driven up to Leeds, Middlesbrough, Blackburn, and here, there, and everywhere, and then, you know, just as the season was about to start, he signed a new Luton contract. So I'm keen not to pack Gabe off on the train on the East Midlands up to Sheffield, but having tasted the Premier League and the money and everything that comes with it, this time it does feel a little bit different. And also I suspect that we've had to get some centre-backs off our books, so it wouldn't complete, and he wasn't Rob's signing. And I just mentioned about robustness, he doesn't tick that box either. I wouldn't be completely surprised if there's some truth in this one.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think he'd probably be gone, to be honest. I think if a decent contract is put on the table, you sign it almost instantly. Maybe not the first couple of weeks, you want to go on holiday and stuff, but that's probably happened and he's probably back now. So I think he's probably gone.
You'd find out what's out there, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
And then if you found out what's out there and nothing out there, then you sign your Luton contract. So something's obviously caught his eye somewhere along the line for him not to sign it. I mean, players are going to be back in pre-season in less than 2 weeks. I would imagine, knowing the way that Gary Sweet operates, there's a get this signed before pre-season. So Pelly was different because of the way he'd come through the club and everything else. He was also a first-team regular at the time. Gabe was in and out of the side last season, would not necessarily an absolute certain starter had Lockyer not got injured, had Bell not got injured, had Berg not been injury prone. You could easily have gone Bell, Lockyer, Berg.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, not that you would know it from last season, but then that's a dearth of talent in the centre-back position. If you think that Mads Anderson's still got to come back as well, and maybe you'd be looking at the jump from League One to the Premier League, which he made last summer, would be quite a big one. And we never really got to see whether he could cope with it. But certainly the jump from League One to Championship isn't as stark, and you'd imagine he would be able to. Bell's now back in the Jamaican side for the Gold Cup in this squad, isn't
Copa America, but yeah, same thing.
whatever, who cares?
I don't think Lionel Messi graces the Gold Cup, but
The Copa America, how are they?
Copa America.
Baffles me.
I'll explain I'll explain once the cameras have stopped rolling.
Yeah, so Bale's in the Jamaican squad this summer as well, so that bodes well for him that he's recovered from that injury. I think he was always targeting it, wasn't he?
He was. He started his YouTube channel, didn't he? And said that was his aim right from the start. So well done him getting back.
Yeah,
congratulations to him.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, well done to him. I hope he stays injury free and comes back for pre-season fit and firing, because it was another player that Luton missed. Obviously, we don't know the situation with Tom Lockyer. They'll give it as long as possible to see what the situation is, whether it's pre-season or whether it's longer. Who knows? Christian Eriksen was, I think, 9 months, wasn't he? And now he's back playing in the Euros. The difference, I suppose, was that was a one-time deal, whereas for Tom, it's two different situations, two different issues, but two very, very worrying situations for Tom. And so the considerations are probably double that of whatever Christian Eriksen went through. But the possibility is there, isn't it? So maybe he could come back at some stage. Who knows? And so there's a lot of options there, I think, for Luton. I do like Gabe, though. I think he's a very athletic player and can bring the ball out very well, committed as well. So it is the one I think that will disappoint most Luton fans, because it does seem like a sideways step and possibly a backward step as well.
It's definitely a backward step,
because obviously Luton finished above Sheffield United, and there's a takeover going. They're in a club in disarray, and they arguably have more money. That's probably it.
Yeah, exactly. His pocket will be lined more than it would at Luton. But if you're asking me, even as a neutral, but certainly as a Luton fan who's more likely to be back in the Premier League first, it would be Luton over Sheffield United. I'm pretty certain of that, unless they sack Wilder rather quickly.
Well, you talk about earlier about players that have left and perhaps regretted it. You've got the likes of Cal Naismith, who very publicly went, I want to get to the Premier League, and got nowhere near it with Bristol City. And Harry Cornick, not quite that situation, but he made the noise of wanting to go up to the Premier League, and that was not going to happen. And it could be one of those for Gabe, I think. But yeah, it would be disappointing to see him go to Sheffield United. It would be a money situation. On the other hand, if you look at it quite neutrally, can you begrudge a player that's going to maybe he doubles his wages? I mean, you can't really begrudge him that. You would, anybody out there would in their own job, if you got an offer to double your wages, you'd take it. So it's one of those hard to take scenarios, I think, really.
It is, but you never know the ins and outs of these things. We've said we've offered him a new contract. For all we know, we've offered him a contract on previous terms, not Premier League terms, previous terms, or just a contract that we think represents what he represents to us, but he thinks he's bigger or better than that, and that's two sides of any bargaining, right, isn't it? And that's how it is.
Yeah, I mean, there's other considerations as well. Before he got injured, he was being considered for the Nigeria squad. Maybe he sees that he's got a shot at that with Nigeria, and get World Cup qualification will be starting almost immediately after the Euros, and
I think it already has started.
Yeah, for some. So not that Nigeria in the Euros, obviously, but don't write in. I know they have an African side, and it's obviously the African Cup of Nations, which seems to come around every 2
Well, that's it, isn't it? I mean, if he's going to play for Nigeria and he gets into Nigeria's side, and we're going to miss him for 6 weeks every 2 years, then his contract that's going to get offered is going to reflect that, isn't it? Ultimately, as well, when you're doing contract negotiations, you offer someone a value that you think they are worth in regards to, can you replace them? They probably think that they can. There's so many things behind this. If he goes, it'll never become public, but it's not a like, oh, I hate Luton all of a sudden. You know, he's just doing what's best for him, and that's exactly what he should do, and that's exactly what everyone in that situation would do. It's no slight on Gabe, it's no slight on us, it's no slight on Sheffield United. It's just the horrible world of football, isn't it? And if he goes, and I hasten to add he hasn't gone yet, but if he goes, he'll be replaced. It might be that he's already been replaced because we've got Tom Holmes from Reading. He's my kind of character. Saw him playing club cricket the other week on Tinterweb. But them days that I thought were long gone, where footballers were allowed to go and churn out for their club side. But I've seen Sean Longstaff do it from Newcastle, done it for his club side. Now Tom Holmes is doing it for his club side. Got our own Beefy Botham at the back.
Yeah, I mean, like I say, they're fully stocked for central defenders. It's just they all got bloody injured last time. So don't forget Reece Burke as well. If they can get a good pre-season into him where he doesn't get injured, he passed the threshold of the 7-game itch where he usually just fell apart. So that happened, and he's got Premier League experience now. So you know,
well, I mean that might be the other thing, mightn't it? Ross Barkley, we think's gone to Aston Villa because he's been guaranteed more game time than maybe we might think he'd get on the outside of it. Well, maybe Gabe's gone to Rob and said, how much game time can you give me? And Rob's saying, well, actually, I can't guarantee you being a first team regular, in which case he's going and looking at his options. That's perfectly plausible with the amount of centre-backs that we've got, because if we do transition to this back four, which I remain convinced we're going to, you'll only put 2 of them in there. You're only going to have 2 more on the bench. We've got at least 6 or 7, maybe 8 if Tom does come back. You know, I mean, I'm not the greatest at maths, but they don't go together, do they?
No, but I'm not the greatest at maths either. But why do you think that you're convinced that this will be a 4-3-3 season?
You just look at the Euros. No teams playing 3 at the back. No successful team in the Premier League play 3 at the back. Take away that Crystal Palace one. He was literally only there for 10 games. Maybe you'll play it next season and that's different. The only team I've seen at the Euros play 3 at the back was Scotland, and their goalkeeper got a bad back by the amount of times he picked the ball out of a minute. But the good thing about that is we come up against him twice this season, so that might be rather handy. I just think football managers, they all learn the same thing, don't they? They all go to the same courses and things like that. I just think it's all cyclical. I think if Gareth Southgate's putting England out in a 4-3-3, you can rest your bottom dollar that the current sort of coaching sort of thing is 4-3-3, and I think that's what we'll eventually transition into.
Well, I suppose it makes sense if you've got designs to get back to the Premier League as quickly as possible, then you've got to play the style of football that is going to work well in that division. So, yeah, I hadn't thought of it until that point. It makes sense.
3 teams that got promoted from the Championship last season: Leicester play 4-3-3, Ipswich play 4-3-3, Southampton played 4-3-3, Leeds lost in the playoff final, play 4-3-3.
Yep, and Luton got the players to play certainly the top 3 aspect of that as well. So it would make sense.
And you know, if we're going to play that long term, we have to play it now, so that we don't get promoted 3-5-2 and then try and play 4-3-3 in the Premier League. We have to do it in the Championship. So I might be wrong, but reading between the lines, I do think that is a transition that will happen. Too many teams play it. You know, you can't go into a game, a top level football these days, and be outnumbered in midfield. We saw it. It just so happened that we had 2 really classy midfielders, but we still got outnumbered in midfield. We still got passed around, and you have to keep the ball. So the more midfielders you have to keep the ball. So like I say, I might be wrong, but
well, I suppose you've got to think about the transition at the other end as well. The goal will be promotion again. So if that happens, and promotion, whether it's this season or next season, whether you can't go through the first 10 games of the season trying to feel out the Premier League. That's one of the reasons that Luke got killed in that.
Yep.
in that season.
Second week of August, you have to be there to go right from it.
Yeah.
Right, before we go, let's quickly reflect on the Premier League. I'm going to pick out some moments, some great moments that we'll always remember. First one, September, would have been August. That didn't really happen. Didn't really happen anyway, did it? We only played 2 games in the month. But September, and I'm sure you know which one I'm going to bring up. Trip to Goodison Park, the wettest day, well, I was going to say for a long time, but actually in the weather that it's been the last couple of weeks, probably wasn't, was it? But we go to Goodison Park. Everton were right in amongst it at the time. We haven't yet won a game, but it was coming. We'd drawn with Wolves.
Yep,
We narrowly,
should have won that one.
should have won that one. Narrowly lost to Fulham. Should have won that one. But we did get a win at Everton. Tom's great goal tackling Ashley Young. Brilliant set piece goal. Scenes afterwards, absolutely superb. First ever Premier League win.
Yeah, memorable one, isn't it, really? And Morris's goal was fantastic as well. Both from set pieces, no problem with that. Deserved it as well. But, both those wins up at Goodison, the Cup one as well, deserved it. Not that they would like to admit that. And
well, they definitely won't do that.
Definitely won't do that. But, they'll crow about being in the Premier League and Luton are not, which is fact. So, but they had 3 goes at Luton and didn't beat them. So there's still that as well.
Indeed, yeah. We'll skip through October, although, the away game at Notts Forest was a particular highlight, wasn't it? Coming from 2-0 down when they got all cocky and declared on us, and we come back to 2 each. But first game of November, bonfire night. There were fireworks, all right, because when we led Liverpool for, 13 minutes from memory, 13, 15 minutes, whatever it was, we were dreaming, and we were dreaming big.
Yeah, and deserved as well. They hadn't turned up, and Luton really took it to them in a really thrilling way. I know it was only 1-1 in the end of it, but it was a great tussle. It was on TV as well, wasn't it? So people got to see what Luton were really about, that we weren't going to sit back and, try and soak things up and stuff. Luton went for it, and that was to Luton's credit, and it earned Luton a lot of plaudits. That was probably one of the starting points of that effort to win over the hearts and minds of neutrals. I think that was it, and as well as the goal. The goal was a stunning one. I think, in many people's top 3s and 5s, and ours won for goal of the season, because it was a wonderful move. But it was a moment as well, wasn't it, where it was like we could be beating Liverpool here, and this will really kickstart the season in a magnificent way. And was a signal that when all the big boys came to Kenilworth Road, it was really difficult for them. It wasn't the case in other grounds, unfortunately, but it was for the when the big boys came here, it really turned it on, and that was one of the first ones. So disappointing in the end that they scored so late on, but there was sort of a human element to that story as well, wasn't it? Because
Luis Diaz,
Diaz, his dad hadn't been found yet. He'd been kidnapped in Colombia, and how he was even on a pitch was unbelievable for me. But he was, and he scored a goal, and thankfully his dad was found not long after, and I think is over here now, isn't he? So when you sort of look at it from this much distance, you can see football's just a game, and that may have given him some solace in some really rough times. But for 15 minutes or whatever it was, the dream were big, weren't they?
They absolutely were. Yeah, if we wasn't just racing through the season, just to wrap up this podcast, I would pay much more attention to the first home win against Crystal Palace 3 weeks after that Liverpool game, and of course that magical night against Arsenal. Roller coaster game where Ross Barkley decided to tell the world that this guy's a proper footballer again, and just in case they didn't see it against Arsenal, he made sure they saw it against Manchester City when he had that midfield in his pocket. But I think we need to fast forward to the last game before Christmas. It was always an emotional afternoon. It was always going to be an emotional afternoon because of what happened 7 days before it. Newcastle fans paid their own tribute to Tom, of course, and we've had lots of questions come in about who the best fans were in the Premier League that we encountered. It was Newcastle, both what they did. Of course, Bournemouth's a different entity. That we'll take that to one side. That's completely different emotions. But from Newcastle, the banner that they laid out at Kenilworth Road, the noise that they made at St James's Park was absolutely incredible. But we were always going to win that game at home against Newcastle, weren't we? Because the players had that inner determination and that spirit that we was going to win that game for Tom Lockyer. And when Andros Townsend scored, he ran over and he got the shirt from the dugout. And it was emotional. It was emotional for non-footballing reasons. It was emotional for humane reasons. But it was a huge victory at the time as well.
It was, but, all football aside, I think it was a much needed get together for everybody. Like, everybody could congregate and try and process what had happened, which was so horrible. I mean, the people that were there at Bournemouth saw it firsthand and the worry, but there's so many more Luton fans that couldn't be there, and then to be with your fellow Hatters in a ground like that to try and make sense of it all, whether you did or not, it's difficult to say, but part of the whole thing that I love about football is the community, the communal aspect of it. So it's like, results can go up and down and stuff, but you're there with your people almost, isn't it? And what that season did, as well as many other seasons, been an incredible decade, has shown that, when Luton are together, there's a strength there. So it was a really, really emotional one, just for every other aspect, but even aside from the football match. But the football match and the result was, something that really put a nice polish on it as well, because we've all seen the photos, and we were there as well, of when they lifted up the shirt. It was a very poignant moment, which I don't think you'll forget for a very long time.
No, indeed not. On December the 16th, we didn't actually think Tom Lockyer would be around to see Kenilworth Road again. But 1 month later he did. And he came round before the Brighton and Hove Albion game. And, it was emotional. He had tears running down his face. Many in the stands had tears running down their face. And it was the most magical night. It was the best night of the entire season. The town were electric. They were unplayable.
They were. The first half was sensational football, just an absolute blitz of emotion and passion and full throttle football that they just could not cope with. And considering the schooling that they dished out at their place on the first day of the season, to do that to them at Kenilworth Road was absolutely phenomenal stuff. And the fact that Tom was there to see it, it all seemed to be clicking at that point. And I think at that point, without the benefit of the hindsight we now have, we were all thinking, we can do this now. We've figured it out. We've got the Premier League. We can do this to a team that took us apart, and we could do it so successfully. And we'd found a Luton style that worked. So like the emotion of that first half, the emotion of Tom being there, but then the hope of what it could possibly have brought was just like sky high levels of adrenaline. And I remain convinced that without the injuries that soon followed after that form, not necessarily that performance would have been repeated again and again, but the form to win matches or to nick points would have been so much greater, and Luton would have been far more resilient had it not been for the injuries to so many key players. That was the game, as well as the one at St James's Park, which we all thought, figured it out now, boys.
4 days later, no one will ever forget that game. Newcastle 4, Luton 4. I mean, it was a Premier League classic. Premier League been going 30 odd years. Absolute classic. I mean, Elijah was untouchable against Brighton, and no one could really touch him at St James's Park either. The atmosphere that day was sizzling. In the Luton end, it was fantastic. But when we went 4-2 up, we were making lots of noise, and it just got drowned out. You don't always see that when a team goes 4-2 down to a side that they turn up expecting to roll over. It's incredible noise. It was just a blinding game of football. Whatever happens, obviously you will look back on it with a little bit of disappointment that we couldn't stay up, but we'll always remember that game. So we went on the road to a Champions League side of the season, took the game to them and led 4-2, and we asked them to bring out all of their big guns to get themselves back into the game, which unfortunately they did do.
Yeah, I mean, it is a proper club, a proper stadium with proper fans.
In a proper city.
Yeah, I mean, I know in the season I did my thing, I dug them out for their ownership model. That still stands. And there'll be some fans that couldn't care less, and that's disappointing. But there are a lot of other genuine fans. It's a working class town, and they know where they come from. Would have, that might have jarred a bit as well for them. But either way, before the whole madness of the Saudis coming in and taking them over, that they were a proper football club that, winning and losing ebbed and flowed the city. I didn't live there, but I've got, my relatives on my mum's side come from that part of the world. So, some sort of affinity in that sense. So, they are a proper club. And when we talk about the sterility of the Premier League in many cases, I don't think it applies to the likes of Liverpool and and Newcastle, Newcastle more so than Liverpool, because Liverpool's a two-club city, but everybody from that city is a Geordie fan, and that's it. And you can't be anything else. And they feel it, and when things are going badly, they feel it. But when things are going well, which they did they were at that point, the noise levels were incredible, and to participate in that match and give Luton fans so much joy and hope, and it's the what if factor of it, isn't it? But you sometimes you just got to accept that football is a mad game, and that was one of them.
Yeah, absolutely. We could mention a couple of other highlights, not least Luke Berry's goal against Notts Forest, but the last real highlight of the Premier League was beating Bournemouth at home. It was the day that we went into. We didn't call it must win because it wasn't must win, but subconsciously we all knew that if we didn't win the game, we'd have no chance of staying up. It wasn't going well, was it? We went a goal behind, as we so often did. But then Luke Berry made that tackle on the edge of the box that broke to Jordan Clark. He put it in the bottom corner. And it's like an Alamo at the goal. Please let the winning goal come. Please, please, please. And finally it did. Carlton Morris got that winning goal, which was touching because he's taken the captaincy over from his best mate who got injured who had that experience against Bournemouth in the reverse game. There was just a sort of, not karma to it, but there was just a sort of circular thing to it, that it was him that won the game and at the time put us right back in the fight to survive.
Yeah, it was important. It was a big game, and also the way that Luton fans were able to thank the Bournemouth fans for everything they did on the day, the fateful day where it all happened, and Tom unfortunately suffered a cardiac arrest. The bond was created that day, and it carried on into that game, and I think it will carry on for quite a long while. But football, people do forget quite easily about results and stuff, about seasons and stuff, but they don't forget about massive moments like that. And I think that will always be something very special between the two clubs. And there's a lot of linkages between them because they both got those points deductions in League Two. They didn't get as severe. One survived and they went on, and they've gone up and they've proved themselves to be a Premier League team. They've had to come back down and they can go up again. And it's sort of like some parallels. A lot of people drew them between Luton and saying, would you like to emulate Brighton and Brentford at the time? Yeah, but that's not on the cards now because those two clubs got up and stayed up. So Bournemouth is the one that you can say, look, it is possible to do that. Similar size ground, and they've gone up, come down and gone up again. And, that season, last season, this season. Do we call it this season or last season?
Oh, Andros Townsend had this thing at the
no,
weekend, didn't he? And he said, let's call it last season because Luton are still in the Premier League. And every Luton fan was like, amen to that, Andros.
Yeah, I mean, in the Premier League season for a while, we thought that they were going to be a relegation rival, and they pulled away to such a fantastic extent that they finished quite comfortably in the end. So that's kudos to them. It shows what can be done. But that match was quite a poignant one, I think.
Really was, yeah. And so that was it. You know, the Premier League, it was a year that started with spot kicks and ended with Coldplay singing About Our Town. What a quite bizarre, unbelievable, but magical 12 months it was.
I've never known anything like it, really. I mean, that for that weekend, it was literally the weekend of the anniversary of the Championship.
The Coldplay day was the year to the day, wasn't it?
So when you really sit back and take stock of it, that I was there for both of those days, and the playoff final was emotional for all the reasons everybody watching this would expect it to be. From where we'd been football-wise to what we'd achieved and got there, I just never thought I'd see it. And there were so many emotions. And then them emotions kept carrying on when people I knew that couldn't get into the game, but they'd gone to Wardown Park and watched it, and you saw all the footage from there. I said at the time, if I could have split myself in two and been also at Wembley, but also in Wardown Park to experience that. The day after that, the promotion party and how the whole town turned out, and you know, to have that bookended at the other end by the festival for starters, the BBC One big weekend to show what Luton can do and the possibilities for Luton outside of football. The possibilities for Luton with football are massive, and we've always said it, that Luton has this huge potential untapped, and that showed that it's not untapped anymore. But there's now, what do we do to carry that on? That's a conversation for another day. But to wrap up those 12 months in such perfect style, and I'm not a Coldplay fan, but I was there and I couldn't believe he was singing about Luton. Everybody around me was having a great time. It was a wonderful weekend, wonderful day to show what Luton's about. And it sort of not only sort of wrapped up a 12-month period that I never thought we'd have ever as a football club, as a town, never, but also sort of bookended a decade for me of just wow factor. You know, different levels of wow factor that kept getting bigger and better. But you know, to have been there and done that, it's the sort of stuff that, you know, I've got kids and I'll be telling them that for a long time to come, whether they want me to or not. By the way, future kids, when you watch this back, that's me telling you about that stuff, because you know, there's a lot of, you know, life can be great, life can be bad, but a lot of the time it's quite on a level, a bit boring, mundane. So when you have these experiences, you've got to really take them in. But for them to all be centered around our town and our football club, and the stuff that really means a lot to me, with you know, music as well, and the communal aspect of football and music and what it can do to people's moods and impressions. On the football side, Luton Town Football Club won over a lot of people, and they've give them a different perspective of what Luton is from the football. And then on the music side with that, it's not only that, there's lots of other people that do great things. So I'm not pointing them out, but it would be a very long time if I went through all the very good things that this town does and doesn't sing about perhaps as much as we should do. But there was lots of people that came into our town and realised that what they'd heard about Luton wasn't what they were experiencing. And that's the starting point for something much bigger.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, that was Chris Martin's best moment since he scored in the JPT final for Luton, wasn't it, 15 years ago?
Certainly my favourite Coldplay song, I have to say that.
Indeed. Yeah. Many of us. Yeah. Just an incredible 12 months, wasn't it? It's 12 months. And like you say, actually it was a decade that we'll never forget. Being a football fan, the lows outweigh the highs by a huge number. So for us to have had this decade that we've just had, brilliant. And actually, now we get to start another journey on the way to Power Court, which we'll touch much more on next season because it'll be much, much more relevant. But it seems right to end with the end of the Premier League here. So, thanks to everyone who was involved in creating some unbelievable memories in a 12 months that James, myself, and many of you watching this will never, ever forget. Just before we go, congratulations to fellow Town fan, former chairman of the club, Nick Owen, who has been made a member of the British Empire by the King. Very, very, very well deserved. Not just for his broadcasting, but also for his charity work as well. Mm-hmm. And you'll see Nick in the stands very, 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 very often. So very well deserved.
Yeah, I mean, he was part of the rescue mission, basically, wasn't he? He was, he led, or he helped put together that consortium. He was the chairman of it, the face of it almost, really, wasn't he? At the point where we needed somebody, and the efforts of the people that are involved in that, both of the people that ended up in the boardroom and people like yourselves and Luton Town Supporters Trust in Luton and Loyal Luton, all the fan groups that were involved in that. It can't really be spoken highly enough of, and you probably all deserve a night if I was giving them out. But if a figurehead is there that you can all get behind, I think that it would be Nick Owen. Yeah, yep. Congratulations, Nick, from all of us at the Luton Town Supporters Trust. Delighted for you getting that award. That's it, not just for this podcast, but for this season. And thanks to everyone who's watched all of our podcasts. This is episode 96 of the season. If you've watched them all, you've seen far too much of mine and James's mugs, and we hope we haven't traumatized you too much with that, but we really, really, really do appreciate all of your support. So many of you have come up to us over the course of the season and told us how much you're enjoying the podcasts, and we can confirm we will be back next season in the Championship. We will do this all again. We may not do every single game. We're still working on plans and everything else, but we'll still finalising the machinations of our new deal. But we've signed on the dotted line.
We have indeed. We've got another year of this. So if you haven't had enough of us yet, good news. You will get at least one more season of the Luton Town Supporters Trust podcast in the Championship. Thanks also to the Hightown Club for staging every single podcast that we've done this season, to Sean Grant and the Wolfgang for all of the intro music that we've had over the course of the season, and to Ed Smith Creative for all of the designs that you've seen on set over the course of the season. Until next time, when we will start to reflect on what life back in the Championship looks like and feels like. There's only a week to go until the fixtures come out and we find out exactly when we take on that lot down the road. Until then, from James and myself, come on, you Hatters.
I love this town. I love this town. I love this town. You know what I love about this town is actually you. Everyone in it has got these massive souls. We're Luton people.